Today, there is bipartisan outrage over a racist video President Trump shared on his social media platform last night. A White House official now telling MS Now a staffer erroneously made the post, but it was 12 hours before it was taken down. Also, I want to make clear that we would not usually show racist content, but will because the president posted it and to inform this important conversation. You can see this post. It depicts former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes in a jungle. It's at the end of a video promoting false claims about voting machines and the 2020 presidential election. In a statement responding to the backlash over the video before it was taken down, the White House press secretary said, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage." None of the rest of that video is included in what Trump posted, only the Obamas. Joining me now, Symone Sanders Townsend, MS Now co-host of The Weeknight and former chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris. Eugene Daniels, MS Now senior Washington correspondent and co-host of The Weekend. They are also the hosts of a brand new MS Now podcast, Clock It, with Symone and Eugene. Symone, as a former communications director, what do you make of the White House statement?
Chris, they think we haven't seen The Lion King. There are no apes in The Lion King. There's not one ape. There's a baboon, Rafiki. He is actually central to the story, but there's not one ape in the movie. So let's just be for real right now. There's not an ape in The Lion King. So I would have never put out a statement like that. The one time somebody thought the person I worked for did say something that was racist and inhumane, I went to my principal and encouraged the principal to apologize and explain to them why what they said was problematic, okay? So Eugene, I cannot grasp this. This is the last thing I'll say. It is not racist because it is offensive. It is offensive because it is inherently racist. The trope about depicting black people as animals goes all the way back to white Europeans looking for a justification for colonization and the enslavement of African people. And it gained prominence in the 1700s and 1800s, and it became a racial, like a scientific theory. I'm using air quotes. And it was a mainstream theory that put a hierarchy that said white Europeans were at the top and Africans were at the bottom. And depiction of apes was very central to this theory. They were at the bottom. They were closer to primitive beings such as apes. Therefore, black people, specifically in that time, Africans, were better suited for forced labor and domination. So it is racist because the root of this theory, this trope, this joke, okay, that the White House is talking about, is rooted in the ability to dominate, rape, pillage, and inflict violence upon black people.
I will say, Eugene, that this post is being condemned from both sides of the aisle, including Republican Senator Tim Scott, saying it's the most racist thing he's seen out of this White House. The implication, of course, is that it's not the only racist thing he's seen out of this White House. But I wonder if you think there is some line with this that has been crossed. And by the way, the posts that have been racist in the past have been posted on official government accounts. These are not individuals within the government who are posting things on their private accounts. I'm sorry, Eugene, go ahead.
No, that is a really important point, because that means that we all paid them to post a racist thing on the internet, right? That is a really important point. You're right. We're hearing from Tim Scott. We're hearing from Mike Lawler, some Republicans who have issues with this. Tim Scott, of course, being the only black senator on the Republican side, and being someone who has been close-ish to this White House. But I will also say this is who Donald Trump is, right? And I think the Republican Party has to accept that. We as journalists have to accept that. The American people have to accept that. The world has to accept that. This is a man who spent money to take out a full-page ad calling for the execution of 5 black and brown men now the exonerated 5. This is someone who spent months and years saying that Barack Obama was not born here, that the racist trope about this, this interloper who doesn't belong here, who is someone who is not a part of the American experiment, the first black president of this country, that's what he spent his time doing. So this is the idea from this White House that this was an accident, the idea that this was just a meme that was posted. This is who Donald Trump is. And even if it is true that a staffer posted it, right? Well, I think we all have a lot of questions about that. If it's true that a staffer posted it, this person believed that it represented the thoughts and the feelings of the president in which that they serve. And that says a lot, that they thought it would be okay. It was up for 12 hours because they do not care. They think it is okay to be racist and treat black and brown people terribly in order to, quote unquote, own the libs. And I think we just have to be really honest about what that means, because it means it's a lot about where we are as a country and how we're going to operate the rest of this presidency and really the Republican Party moving forward.
Well, let's talk about what else is happening right now, Simone. I mentioned this image of the Obamas was inside a video focused on false theories about election fraud in the 2020 election. Trump, of course, has come under fire for saying he wants to nationalize election in 15, he calls crooked states, because, quote, these people were brought to our country to vote and they vote illegally. What is Donald Trump trying to accomplish here?
It is this. I'm sorry, I just have to say, it's the 6th day of Black History Month. This is too much. I just think we need a do-over. So this idea, first of all, I do think he is trying to steal the election. And I'm not talking about manipulating votes when I say that. I think I'm talking, so let's just be clear. What I'm talking about is the actions that the president himself and the people around the president have taken. The executive order that he put out about elections at the beginning of this presidency, the call to not Georgia, but to Texas last year, asking them to find him 5 more seats. That is what kicked off this mid-decade redistricting to manufacture more seats to manipulate the voters, because the president does not believe that he could win as the maps currently stand. I'm talking about the election deniers that have been given roles within the Department of Homeland Security, made up roles over election integrity. One of the ways he will try to steal the election is he's asking these states for voter rolls across the country. Why do you need the voter rolls? Well, what do voter rolls contain? They contain personal information, such as your Social Security number, names and whatnot. Potentially, that could be used to target people with misinformation and disinformation. We already know from reporting that has at least 2 staffers from DOJ, according to Bloomberg reporting. A whistleblower noted that they had referred the actions up to disciplinary chains because these DOJ individuals had given sensitive information to a voter advocacy group. I highly doubt that those people were looking to elect Democrats. So the going in and seizing ballots out of Fulton County 6 years after the election was happening. If they're willing to do that for an election that happened 6 years ago, what do you think they're willing to do in the election coming up? So I think people should be very clear that the president is in fact trying to steal the election, and Democratic governors specifically have been warning about this. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who is term limited in Michigan, she is the vice chair of the Democratic Governors Association, and I want to point people to an interview that she did with NPR where she talked about the real concerns that she and other governors have about what the Department of Homeland Security could do and how they could be used in this election coming up. So in my understanding with conversations with a number of different Democratic entities and lawyers is that Democrats are preparing for chaos before, during, and after this upcoming election.
It is the first week of Black History Month in America, and we'll start with the sublime. It's worth reminding ourselves what civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision was for our country. When he stood before the masses in Washington, D.C., gave that iconic historic speech, said that he had a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, that all men are created equal. He dreamed of a nation where his children were no longer judged by the color of their skin. And now for the ludicrous. In stark contrast, this is how Donald Trump decided to launch the first week of Black History Month in America in 2026. He did so by putting his racism on full display. He shared a blatantly, flagrantly racist post last night. It led to the rare occurrence of some members of Donald Trump's own political party drawing a line in the sand, which led to an unusual reversal from Donald Trump, but not before the White House first tried to excuse the display of racism. In one of Donald Trump's late-night Truth Social sprees, wherein he shared posts filled with conspiracy theories, the kind of spree that would make a figure in entertainment or sports face questions about their faculties, Donald Trump posted away until he got to a racist depiction of President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, depicting them as apes. He spread that image to his 10 million followers. Now, normally around here, we wouldn't present this racist content, but we decided to do so, not just because the sitting president of the United States posted it. He posted this image of a former president, a very popular one, and First Lady. But it isn't going to be our job to edit or whitewash the most repugnant conduct and actions of Donald J. Trump. He shared this image to the world in our name as Americans, and you should see it, all of you, especially people who voted for him. What's new about this one? Well, a few things. I mean, Donald Trump's been launching racist attacks on President Obama and Michelle Obama for years now. Donald Trump championed and amplified the birther conspiracy theory that President Obama was not born in the United States, a lie. And the New York Times writes this of Donald Trump's latest display of racism towards President Obama and Michelle Obama, quote, "The depiction of Mr. and Mrs. Obama as apes perpetuates a racist trope used historically by slave traders and segregationists to dehumanize black people and justify lynchings. There is no denying that racist history of depicting black people as apes." And I know we talk a lot about what Donald Trump knows and doesn't know. There's no idiot defense here, because the White House actually defended this. They were good with this. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt went on the attack. She tried to justify Donald Trump's post with this, quote, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage and report on something today that actually matters to the American public." Like your deeply unpopular agenda. Don't worry, we'll get to that, Caroline. And a little fact check for Lion King lovers. No apes. There are no apes in The Lion King. The backlash to Trump's post was swift and oddly, rarely bipartisan. The list of Republicans rebuking Donald Trump's racist post grew by the hour today. Republican Senator Tim Scott, a staunch defender of Donald Trump, called the post, quote, "the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House," end quote. Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick writes this, quote, "Racism and hatred have no place in our country ever. They divide our people and weaken the foundations of our democracy. History leaves no doubt when division is inflamed by those in positions of power, the consequences are real and lasting. Whether intentional or careless, this post is a grave failure of judgment and is absolutely unacceptable from anyone, most especially the President of the United States. A clear and unequivocal apology is owed." After leaving the post up for 12 hours, Donald Trump then deleted it. And desperate to shift the blame somewhere, anywhere, a White House official says a White House staffer, quote, erroneously posted the racist content. If that's the case, it is inexplicable then that there's still been zero apology issued to the Obamas. A blatantly racist post amplified by Donald Trump during the first week of Black History Month is where we start today. Senior White House reporter Ron Hilliard is here. He has chronicled an unbelievably shameful list of all the examples of Donald Trump's racist conduct. It took my breath away to see it the way you compiled it, Ron. Also joining us, Princeton University professor and political analyst Eddie Glott is here. Puck News senior political columnist and national affairs analyst John Heilman is here. With me at the table, host of Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton's here. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that you raised in your in your buildup something that's very important. People need to understand Donald Trump began his political career with racism. I mean, we fought with him in New York for many years, marched on him when he called for the execution of 5 young men who were falsely accused of raping a white woman, was found guilty of discrimination in housing. But when he decided he wanted to be Democrat sometime, would go to social events with all of us, he decided to enter politics by saying Barack Obama is not one of us. The racial overtones, undertones, whatever way you want to call it, is how he entered the political arena. So we're only seeing the manifestation of what he said it was all along. He won the White House with us against them. He ran an administration. Don't forget, in his first term is when we went through George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, all of that. He was president and did nothing about it other than to go in front of a church across the street from the White House and said, when the shooting starts, the looting starts, the shooting starts, and threaten the protesters. So it's like full circle. Now we see, in the beginning of Black History Month, 2026, the President of the United States puts out a depiction of the former President and First Lady who raised the hopes of many in this nation that we had crossed some line and made some advancement as a society. And he comes with something that only the Confederate President Jefferson Davis would have done if there was Twitter then. And there's no way around this. When Tim Scott would even denounce him, and you can't get a public apology, and somebody, if you claim somebody in the White House did it, how does someone have access to what the president can put out? And why aren't they fired? Why aren't they being walked out like you walked out Omarosa in your first term? You walked her out. Well, walk somebody out of the White House if that somebody exists. The reason I don't think you can walk them out is you'd have to open up the Oval Office and walk him out.
I think that's exactly right. I think it also isn't a mask off moment. It is sort of the substance of the administration is state-sanctioned racial profiling, asking people for their papers. I mean, that's what's happening in America, in Minneapolis, but all over the country.
You have state-sponsored racial profiling. Minneapolis, if you're a certain color or speak a certain language, you're an automatic suspect, even if you're 2 years old. And you also see where they're now saying, oh, let's nationalize elections. We're going to take all of your rights away. All of this inside of 1 year and a few days of being in office. Clearly, the first thing he did when he got in office this time, declare war on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. That became the top of his agenda. So this is not out of context. This is not a one-off. He came in saying this, and he came in trying to, in many ways, execute this as president of the United States. And he was able to get up a lot of that, of his following, to go along with that until they themselves start seeing that he was picking their pockets while he was talking about blacks. And I'm not saying that everyone, I say it often, and it's been said before, I'm not saying everyone that voted for Donald Trump's a racist, but every racist voted for Donald Trump because they felt comfortable there.
Let me ask you this question, because I feel like we could talk for 2 hours about Donald Trump. But what about all the people funding Donald Trump's excesses? You've got companies, including Comcast, paid for the destruction of the East Wing. You've got tech executives standing shoulder to shoulder. Tim Cook was in a tux the day after one of the deadly ICE shootings in Minnesota. I mean, what do you think it says about the titans of industry that they're standing shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump?
It says that they have a tolerance or an engagement themselves, one or the other. At best, they tolerate it.
They either like this.
Yes. At best, they tolerate it. At worst, they engage in and entertain it. And they ought not be allowed to have government contracts, government dealings, city, state, or federal, or our consumer dollars. That's why some of us have engaged in trying to resurrect the boycott type of infrastructure, picking off some of these companies. You want to finance this, you shouldn't finance it at our dollars. I don't care if you don't love me, but you're not going to use my money to institute and implement hate. You don't ever have to love me, but I'm not going to finance you having this kind of discriminatory atmosphere or fund somebody that is blatantly and openly saying that. And one thing we've not seen is one statement, one tweet from one of the corporate giants that deal with government. We've even seen Tim Scott, I'll repeat. Where are the ones that are making all of this money off of this administration that sit around the table with him and cut deals? Where is one CEO standing up saying this is unacceptable and we can no longer participate financially with you if this is your behavior? Where is that? Oh, I'm sorry, they're probably going to see his movie out about Milana.
The first statement that the White House put out today, this morning, about this video was from the White House press secretary, where she said this was fake outrage, faux outrage, and that all the president did was repost a video, a meme video that depicted him as the king of the jungle and some Democrats as characters from The Lion King. There is not one ape in The Lion King. Not one ape. There's a baboon, Rafiki, but there are no apes in The Lion King. So the reality of the situation is that the trope of depicting black people as animals, close to apes, actually did not start as an insult nor as a joke. It started as justification for the rape and pillage and enslavement of African people on the continent. You can literally, on the continent of Africa, you can literally look it up. And it was what the white Europeans perfected that the Americans used to justify chattel slavery. Take that all the way up to the civil rights movement. Again, the trope reappeared to justify why black people in this country shouldn't vote. And there's a direct line from what the white Europeans cooked up in the 1700s to this particular White House that now seems to deem anyone who is not a straight white man a DEI hire and not there because of merit. So know your history. Yes, this is in fact a distraction. That don't mean we're not going to address it, though, because it is Black History Month. Only 6 days in, damn it. Y'all need to pull it together.
Well, not too much more to say after that, because it is a perfect summation, Professor, of where the country finds itself right now. My take on this today was really a hard one, because this is what Donald Trump thinks of black people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate the history lesson. I appreciate the connection because it's very important. But at the end of the day, this is what this man, as president of the United States, thinks of black people, irrespective of their title, position, their accomplishments, their successes, their failures, who they are, who they aren't. You are black, and that's enough for me. His history, his first public discourse on the subject of race occurred in 1973-74 when he was sued by the Department of Justice for discriminating. Why? Because he didn't want black people to live in the apartments that his name was on. So this, for me, is just a continuation of the Donald Trump story that many of us have been trying to get both black and whites inside the party to understand and stop shilling for this person the way you have. Because guess what? You own this thing now, too. You own this. So it's great people coming out today, Professor, and saying, this is the most racist. Oh, my God. Where were you when there were shithole countries? Where were you when there was talking about black people and black women in particular, calling them piggies, calling them names? Where were you then?
I don't believe this is the most racist thing Tim Scott's heard in the White House. Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, that's just the first thing. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's the worst thing. I have been to South Carolina. I know some of the things that are said in this White House. I don't think it's the most racist thing Donald Trump has ever said. We still don't know what might be on the cutting room floor from The Apprentice, but I have heard stories because I've talked to people who actually worked on The Apprentice. So none of this ever shocks me. It also, because it's Black History Month, and because of the Epstein files, and because of the economy, I don't allow him to elicit my outrage.
There you go.
Because I'm infinitely more disgusted this man is bankrupting people. I am infinitely more disgusted this man is taking away health care. I am infinitely more disgusted that this guy does not care about the fact that he socialized with alleged child rapists and molesters for years and years and years. This is just part and parcel of what Donald Trump has always been. And I'm also never impressed by Republicans who now, when the heat is finally hitting them about ICE, about the economy, about everything else, now they can suddenly say, well, I guess we can sort of admit he's racist. He's always been racist. That's not new.
It's not new.
And I can pat my head and rub my tummy, and I don't have to be able to look at his racism and have that distract from the other ways that he is destroying this country.
Well, it's not new, and it's not just in the language or in the rhetoric. It's also steeped so deeply into the policies of this administration. I mean, I think back to the way Donald Trump originally came to power with birtherism, which, yes, is fundamentally racist, but is also this questioning about who is deserving of being American, who is considered legitimate in their American identity and in their power as American. And there is an absolute through line there to his attacks on voting, to his attacks on the 14th Amendment, to what we are watching play out in Minneapolis and all across this country as his deportation force goes into American cities and is in many cases taking American citizens and detaining them because the Supreme Court of the United States has condoned racial profiling. So, Michelle, draw for me a line from what we are hearing from this White House and what they're actually doing.
Well, and I think, to bring it back to Minneapolis, I mean, the reason that they went in there in the first place was not because there was some sort of crisis of undocumented immigrants. There are fewer undocumented people in Minnesota than in the average state in this country. They went in there because of this demonization campaign against Somalis in particular, right? And then that's also why they went into Lewiston, Maine. Lewiston, Maine, for a long time was held up as this immigration success story, a town that had been revitalized by immigration after kind of being hard on its luck after the mills closed. Again, they go specifically into Lewiston, Maine. Then there was news earlier this week. I was in Springfield, Ohio, because there was plans to go into Springfield, Ohio, a town that's been revitalized by Haitian immigrants and that's been targeted over and over by this administration. They've tried to take away TPS status for Haitians, who are here legally because they have temporary protected status. Everybody knows that Haiti is not a safe place for people to return to, and nevertheless, they've tried to claim in court that it is, that somehow the crisis there is over. So the way that they're doing mass deportation is by ethnic group, which is, there's a name for that, right? And so I just think the reason that Donald Trump is president is because he channeled white rage towards Barack Obama with his birtherism conspiracy. And it's been, not just racism, Donald Trump has also channels a lot of misogyny, but racism has been absolutely a through line in his two presidencies now. And the reason that this moment I think is interesting is that there's so much denial among Republicans who will insist that kind of Donald Trump isn't what we can all see that he is. And then every so often something happens where that denial becomes unsustainable. And they all, it happened kind of after January 6th. It's happened at a couple other moments. It never lasts. But there's always this moment where you can see him clearly, and even they have to somehow respond to, the obscenity of having this man in the White House.
Yeah, you want to chime in, Jason?
I also want to add that, let's be clear about everybody who's responsible for this, right? It's not just that you have white Americans who are racist, whatever, but Republicans, they can't sell their racism without the active participation of black and brown people, okay? We can look at Candace Owens. Okay, we can look at some of the things that Byron Donald has excused. We can look at some of the things Tim Scott has excused. Nick Fuentes, Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, they can't even sell racism without black and brown people helping them. And that's part of the problem. So again, I think it's important for us to highlight what Donald Trump has always been. But we have to make sure that we look at racism and systematic racism and white supremacy and all these sorts of things as a group project. And it gets really lazy if we just say it's Trump and his administration. There are lots of people participating in this kind of problem. And that's what I think America needs to understand, because as long as we just think it's him being a bad outlier and it's his party sort of protecting him, we forget about the fact that this is a pervasive problem, whether you're looking at ICE, whether you're looking at policing, whether you're looking at the Department of Justice or anything else like that. It is a larger issue than just one bad president. He is a symptom, not necessarily the cause of these problems.
Well, the problem is in America, we have never truly reckoned with how this country came to be in the first place. And so when we discuss white supremacy, we don't talk about it as an ideology, but that is in fact what it is. And because it's an ideology, black people can be white supremacists. Come on now. Just like women can be sexist. Right? Because there is a belief in the patriarchy. There's an ideology. There's an infrastructure there. But I don't want to get too analytical tonight. I will just say that
you pride yourself on being analytical, and we live for it, Simone Sanders Townsend. On tonight of all nights, I want to hear that analysis. And I just want to tell you, I'm not sure where this happened. One of our producers jumped in my ear. The president of the United States was just asked about this by several reporters at the White House, and he dodged all of those questions, Simone.
I mean, because there's no good, because the actual answer is, you didn't think it was funny? Of course, this is what I think. Let's move on. Why is this a big deal for you? That's the actual answer, because that's the truth of who he is. But it's just a little too untoward, given the outrage from every little corner of the political spectrum today, for him to say that. But there's one thing about this president. He has been wildly consistent in who he is. And so maybe I think the issue that Jason Johnson and the chairman are raising here is that there are a number of people that have yet to reckon that not only did they excuse the president's racism and sexism, right, and his love of white supremacist ideology, because that is in fact what the Great Replacement theory is rooted in. Okay, this idea that now the Republicans are saying Democrats are shipping in, they're letting in all of these brown people to vote for them, and they're trying to replace us. So we have to send them back to where they're from. That's what Stephen Miller's saying. That is white supremacist ideology. But if we call it that and we say that, then there's a lot of people that think that they're good and moderate and the good guys, okay, and that are just waiting until Donald Trump is out of here, and then we're going to go back to how it was. There are a lot of people that then need to reckon with they themselves, okay? So I don't know if the people are going to do their work. I will just say the Epstein files ain't going anywhere.
They're not. Yeah, the Epstein files aren't going anywhere, and we will continue to talk about them because the victims of the Epstein files deserve this moment more so than Donald Trump wants them to have it. Michelle, you know, I don't want to mix apples and oranges here, but there are you really laid out the through line argument and narrative around how all this comes together. Let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to put a lot on you as a woman, as a white woman, nothing like that. I just, as an American, as you step back and look at this, how do you see America receiving this moment? How do you think this lands? We have outrage and notes from people who have profile and so forth, but someone at the kitchen table tonight, are they talking about this? Is this something? Because my suspicions is this may not land as deeply as we would like it to, and that there may be more people who take comfort and may even laugh at it and think it's, you know, it's a humorous way, and Black History Month was always a waste to begin with.
Well, I think that probably a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump feel that way. And you can see in a certain way this kind of post as fan service towards a certain part of his base. I mean, I do think it has clearly landed enough that the White House has felt like it had to respond, right? They felt like they had to back off. They felt like they had to blame it on some mysterious staffer who goes on kind of posting sprees from the president's account in the middle of the night, which if somebody's authorized to do that, we should probably know about it. But, you know, look, this is a very, very unpopular president. I think that this has clearly broken through. It's why so many Republicans felt like they had to respond, like they had to denounce him, even if, you know, now some of them are already walking back their denunciations or saying there's nothing to see here. But again, I think it was one of those moments, and there are these moments from time to time when the veil drops and the sort of lies that people have to tell themselves to justify this kind of kamikaze presidency become insupportable.
Yes. My final word on this, Alicia, is straightforward to the camera, to the American people. When we elect a representative, a president, they are an extension of who we are. Tonight, I have to ask you, is this who we are? Because this is who our president is. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier in the hour about how all of this happened 6 days into Black History Month. And the complete and lack disregard for how this month resonates with Black and brown people in this country. What's your reaction to both what you heard from the president and from Leader Jeffries? Just because they both framed, I think, this moment very well, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, it is so interesting because it's like we take one step forward and then we take 2 steps back. And that's exactly what we've gotten out of this administration. And so for everyone that wanted to say that Black people were overreacting or that we were being dramatic, I want to be clear that it's not just his words, it's in his policy that he is slinging this type of hate, whether we're talking about ICE and how he deals with everyone, because it's not limited to immigrants, or whether we're talking about the rolling back of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I do want to be clear. You know, I don't give Donald Trump a lot of credit for much, but I will say this. He is the king of distractions and division. And right now, he has everyone talking about the fact that he posted something that was racist, which frankly, if you've been paying attention, it was right on par. You're not surprised whatsoever. Right. At the same time, this is the day after he said, stop talking about the Epstein files, as more and more is coming out, as we're being told as lawmakers that we're going to be given an opportunity to start to physically go and inspect the files. He is trying to distract, and frankly, he is doing a good job of it. We know who he is. We know who he was when he got elected the first time. We know who he was when he got elected this time. And so there's not really much to be surprised about when it comes to Donald Trump and not really having a level of respect specifically for people of color.
There's a level of respect. There's also the bravery to stand behind what he has said and done. Take a look at the President of the United States dodging questions on this very issue. Won't apologize. Just walk away. Just wave. I know it doesn't surprise you.
Fast. Oh my God.
He's moving fast, Congressman. And here's the thing that we're talking about. It's not just in the rhetoric. It's in the policy, as you said. I mean, I'm thinking about little Liam Ramos and his bunny hat and the fact that a nation has rallied around the image of this child as humanizing something that we often talk about simply in numbers. You have Trump's DHS pushing to expedite the removal of Liam and his family. What does that tell you about what their objective here and politically how they are reading this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we have to guess because they have been very overt with their words, not just Trump, but J.D. Vance. It has been kind of this, we don't have to hide anymore. We are the ones that are being targeted, we being white people, right? There is a lack of respect for the contributions that all of us make to this country. Whether you are Black Americans who did not arrive because we wanted to be here, but because we were dragged over here and stolen from our homeland. Or whether you are immigrants that are simply seeking refuge and a better life for yourself and seeking asylum, or whether it's just a matter of opportunities, because we used to have it where we felt like contributions from other people actually helped us. And frankly, the numbers bear out that they do, whether we're talking about the contributions that are paid in taxes, whether we're talking about the contributions that overall just keep our economy going. Right now, we know that this economy is shrinking, and there's a lot of reasons that it's shrinking. But honestly, a big part of this has to do with the disastrous way that they are handling immigration. As it relates to little 5-year-old Liam, I'm sorry, but that's not who he espoused to be going after when he made his campaign promises. He said he was going to go after the bad guys. Now, those of us that know Trump well enough knew that he was lying. We knew that he would go after any and everyone. You tell me how showing up at an elementary school and grabbing the kids is going to make America great. Please explain that to me. And I want to be clear about something, because Liam has become a symbol But just like we've seen other children be symbols, whether we're talking about integration of schools or otherwise, there are other children there. In visiting that facility, I want to be clear, there are hundreds of children, and the youngest was 1 month old. I don't know how you get to say you're so proud of the America that we are seeing on display right now. Real patriotism means to push back against this, because somehow we haven't found a jail cell for anybody in the Epstein files. But we've got children that are rotting away in something that looks like a prison to me.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump is to his bones a racist. His administration is above all else pursuing an explicitly racist agenda. None of this is news, unfortunately. But every so often, the President of the United States does something so grotesque, so egregiously offensive, that we have no choice but to view it in the larger context of his persistent bigotry. So, last night, around midnight, Trump's social media account posted and then reposted a truly deranged video pushing 2020 election conspiracies, which he's obsessed with, that also depicted the first black president and the first black first lady of this country, Barack and Michelle Obama, as apes. The Obama family has thus far not responded to the video, but House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries has.
This disgusting video posted by the so-called president was done intentionally. Donald Trump and his vile, racist, and malignant behavior. This guy is an unhinged bottom feeder. President Obama and Michelle Obama are brilliant, caring, and patriotic Americans. They represent the best of this country. It's time for John Thune, Mike Johnson, and Republicans to denounce this serial fraudster who's sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue pretending to be the President of the United States.
Americans of all stripes were as disgusted and offended as Leader Jeffries, but the White House's first response was to pretend they didn't know why. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called it a, quote, fake outrage. But as they so often do, I think the White House misread the room here. Maybe not everyone is as racist as we are. People were genuinely upset by the President of the United States in 2026 promoting this kind of just like abhorrent gutter racism, right? And the outrage was real and it was bipartisan. Republican members of Congress, including Representative Mike Lawler of New York and Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, condemned the post, as did Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, a staunch Trump ally, the only black Republican serving in that chamber, who posted that it was the most racist thing he'd seen out of the White House, leaving many to ask the question, what was the second most racist thing, Senator? And so Trump did an about-face. The video was quietly deleted. The White House blamed an anonymous staffer. It's an excuse they've used in the past, and you can determine for yourself if you believe it. But if it's true, I think we deserve to know why a staffer is posting as President of the United States in the middle of the night. That's kind of weird. I think it's clear that the outcry from his fellow Republicans is what moved the needle here. And while it is notable, one also has to wonder why this instance of rank bigotry crossed the line. Donald Trump is proudly publicly racist all the time. Seemingly every week, he goes on some disgusting tirade about, for instance, the black residents of Minneapolis. He spent a good chunk of his presidential campaign lying about Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs. This is who he is. But even setting aside his personal bigotry, which is real and an animating force, his administration, using all the powers of the state, is pursuing an explicitly racist agenda to rewrite the history of anti-black racism in this country and to force black people out of elite institutions, both public and private. It is a whole of government approach, all the way back to the earliest days of this administration. Do you remember this? I think we've all lost it, because, you know, the news cycle goes past. Do you remember they spent weeks blaming a horrific, deadly plane crash, an absolute tragedy, dozens of people dead, on DEI, right? Remember that? The implication being that if the pilot were anyone other than a white man, well, then that's your cause right there. They're inherently unqualified.
Something the president said that I think bears re-emphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry.
Now, we know a lot more about the crash. It doesn't really seem like the air traffic controllers were the sort of key cause of it. And as it so happens, all three crew members of the Black Hawk helicopter involved in the crash were white. The first instinct of this administration was to blame people of color. It's part of a pattern. Not long after that DEI outburst, the White House scrubbed Jackie Robinson, yes, that Jackie Robinson, from the Defense Department's website. In addition to breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball, Robinson also served as a second lieutenant in World War II, where he was court-martialed for refusing to move to the back of an Army bus. The page, which they scrubbed, was later restored when, again, like what happened today, the White House got caught. Late last year, the White House removed two federal holidays honoring Black history, Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth, the day of the liberation of enslaved people in Texas, from the list of days when national parks offer free admission. They were replaced with Trump's birthday. Just last month, workers directed by the National Park Service used crowbars to deface a Philadelphia memorial honoring 9 enslaved people who were forced to work for George Washington. This week, the National Park Service removed brochures at the Medgar Evers Monument in Mississippi, get this, in order to remove the descriptor racist from the KKK member who murdered the civil rights icon. Once again, they appear to have backtracked after getting caught. I could go on and on and on, but even more insidious are the efforts to purge Black people from elite institutions and government and replace them with, well, generally, to be honest, white dudes. For all their talk about merit, these people have zero conception of it. This administration is committed to a project of aggressive affirmative action for assorted fail sons and conservative white men. This graphic from the New York Times last year makes it so clear. Trump forced out the Black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, replaced her with a white guy. Trump forced out the first Black librarian of Congress, replaced her with a white guy. Trump forced out first Black woman to serve on the National Labor Relations Board, nominated 2 white guys. He forced out the first Black chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, replaced him with a white guy. He forced out the only Black member of the National Transportation Safety Board, replaced him with a white guy. Trump is trying to fire Lisa Cook, the first Black woman to serve on the Fed's Board of Governors, and those are just the people in government. They want Black people banished from power. How much more obvious could it be? There is a clear pattern here. They are pursuing a racist agenda. That video, usefully perhaps, was just Trump fully taking the mask off.
Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump. Settle in for this one, folks. Because he's just reminded the country who he really is. And this time, even some of his hardcore supporters can't bring themselves to defend him. Because late last night, on Trump's social media account, he reposted a vile and racist video that depicted our nation's first Black president and first lady as apes. It is an unambiguous play on one of the oldest country's oldest and most tired, let me tell you how tired it is, racist tropes. At first, the Trump administration did what they always do, defend the president and attack the press. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said in a statement to reporters, quote, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage and report on something today that actually matters to the American public." Quick note for the press secretary. There are no apes in The Lion King. And the backlash to Trump's post was swift and severe, especially from House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries.
This disgusting video posted by the so-called president was done intentionally. Donald Trump and his vile, racist, and malignant behavior. This guy is an unhinged bottom feeder. President Obama and Michelle Obama are brilliant, caring, and patriotic Americans. They represent the best of this country. It's time for John Thune, Mike Johnson, and Republicans to denounce this serial fraudster who's sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue pretending to be the President of the United States.
But this time, Trump's racism was so overt, it was even too much for some of his own party. We saw multiple Republican lawmakers condemn the post. Some of them even called on Trump to apologize. Here's what Senator Tim Scott posted, quote, praying it was fake because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. The president should remove it, end quote. Praying it was fake? Before this tweet, surely the senator was well aware of the exonerated five, the birther conspiracy, the Muslim ban, shithole countries. All of that fake? I could go on, but so could you. But none of those Republican members of Congress who sent out a tweet today had enough courage to say what this three-time Trump voter told C-SPAN.
I am a registered Republican, voted for the president, supported him, but I really want to apologize. I mean, I'm looking at this awful picture of the Obamas. What an embarrassment to our country. All this man does is tell lies. He is not worthy of the presidency. He takes bribes blatantly, and now he's being a racist blatantly. He's pathetic as a president, and I just want to apologize to everybody in the country for supporting this rotten man.
And to note, the president left that racist post up for 12 hours. But then he finally took it down. Then the White House tried to claim that an unnamed staffer was responsible for the post. Now, I don't know what's more insulting, that they thought we would believe that Trump didn't post it, or that they thought we would be comforted by a random staffer posting from the president's social media account at 11:44 p.m. Even Fox News felt the need to press Trump's White House press secretary about the president's response to all of this.
It's not just Democrats. There are Republican senators, Pete Ricketts, others saying, look, we understand it was us, but the president should just come out and apologize for it and say, look, this was a mistake. Sorry if it offended anyone. Why not?
Well, look, I won't get ahead of the president, Laura, and he may be speaking with the press later today.
Okay. She doesn't want to get ahead of the president. Well, moments later, Trump had the opportunity to apologize. And this is what he said.
Mr. President, a number of Republicans are calling on you to apologize for that post. Is that something you're going to do?
No, I didn't make a mistake.
What mistake? He didn't make a mistake. The president also claimed he simply did not see the racist part of that video before it was posted in his name. Folks, I don't know about you. I don't believe him. Remember, Trump left that post up for 12 hours. The White House even defended it as a harmless parody of The Lion King. They knew, and so did he. And look, it's all profoundly disheartening. There's no doubt about that. Not that Trump posted it, but that he thought he could post it in an America that would accept it. Folks, that says everything about where this man thinks America is and what he thinks especially about black men and women. So yes, there is a lot I could say about Donald Trump. But this moment is so much deeper than him. And today I found myself thinking about my own childhood, growing up right here in Washington, D.C. I found myself thinking about the time when my mom and dad couldn't take me to certain parts of this city, certain parks in this city, or shop at certain stores in this city. And today, like so many Americans out there, Donald Trump brought that all back. We got to relive it. We got to relive that time. It feels so foreign, but it's really real. And so today, like many of the folks who grew up with me in this town and many folks around the country during that time, we're reliving it, my own childhood. And that's being projected on me and countless other Americans by the sitting president of the United States.
We begin this morning with President Donald Trump refusing to apologize for the racist posts on his social media of former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Last night on Air Force One, he said it wasn't his fault.
Mr. President, a number of Republicans are calling on you to apologize for that post. Is that something you're going to do?
No, I didn't make a mistake. I mean, I look at a lot of thousands of things, and I looked at the beginning of it. It was fine. And they had that one post, and I guess it was a takeoff. By the way, a lot of people covered. If you look at where it came from, I guess it was a takeoff on The Lion King, and certainly it was a very strong post in terms of voter fraud. Nobody knew that was at the end. If they would have looked, they would have seen it, and probably they would have had the sense to take it down.
Take on The Lion King or not, the racist video on his social media account was posted late Thursday, the 5th day of Black History Month, and it depicts the Obamas as apes, a longtime racist trope that has deep historical roots. The post sparked backlash with Democratic and Republican lawmakers who quickly condemned it. After nearly 12 hours online, the White House deleted the post and placed the blame on a staff member. Joining us now, Symone Sanders Townsend, co-host of The Weeknight on MS Now, and Miles Taylor, former DHS chief of staff in the first Trump administration and founder of Defiance.org. Thank you both so much for joining us, especially Symone. You had a late night with the show last night. So let's dive right into this. From the scrubbing of an article honoring Jackie Robinson at the beginning of this administration to the whitewashing of Medgar Evers, there is a consistent commitment to racial revisionism from this administration.
I think that's
what's the human cost of this?
Look. First of all, there are no apes in The Lion King.
Let's be very clear.
This explanation.
Rafiki is a baboon.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's only one of him. He literally left his, but you know what? They need to watch the movie. They think we haven't seen it. But none of these explanations are sufficient from them about this video or the things that they're doing when it comes to the history of this country. But what this White House is trying to enact is frankly something. There's a movement across the country for this. There's a movement to revise history, to not teach all of our history, only teach the good parts, right? As though we can fully understand this country without teaching the full picture. So I think the human cost of this is it sends a signal, which is why, even though I do believe this is a distraction, it does need to be addressed. Yeah. Because if it's not addressed, it sends a signal to other leaders. It sends a signal to other organizations. It can send a signal to businesses. It can send a signal to young people that this is actually acceptable and okay. And the last point I'll make is you talked about the historical racist trope. There's a direct line from what the white Europeans cooked up as a justification for colonization in the 1700s to this assault on quote-unquote DEI that we have seen from particularly this administration. These are two sides of the exact same coin. But if you don't understand your history, right, which is why we have to know all of it, then you might struggle to understand. You might struggle to grasp that.
I think the thing that's really important for journalists to really be clear-eyed about, for the people in the media apparatus, for lawmakers, for regular everyday Americans, is just to accept that this is who Donald Trump is, right? Whether or not he himself pushed post, if a staffer actually did it, that staffer believed that they would not be in trouble if they posted this video depicting the Obamas as apes or gorillas or whatever they are supposed to be. I want to look at some of Trump's racist history that we have a full screen of. In 1975, consent decree over discriminatory rental practices. 1989, he called for the death penalty for the now exonerated Park Five. He pushed the Obama birtherism allegations starting in 2011. 2018, he called them S-hole countries at 7 a.m., so I'll keep it cute. At 2022, dinner with Nick Fuentes, a known racist, at Mar-a-Lago. Efforts to reframe U.S. history and slavery in 2025. He's been saying Somalians are garbage also since 2025. Symone, I want to stick with you on this because I feel like oftentimes, and we've talked about this in our group chat, is that people want the president to be different. They want, it reminds me me of his whole first term when it was like, this is the day he became president, right? And it's like, we have to actually accept who he is because it tells us where we are as a country, what people are willing to accept in the Republican Party, what the Democratic Party should stand for, and what people who think that racism is bad should also stand for.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality of the situation is Donald Trump he's two things. I believe he's a master marketer, and he is wildly consistent. And he has, this wasn't new, so I'm not surprised that he did this. I'm disappointed. I'm exasperated. It's like it was the 5th day of Black History Month. Goodness, like, what are y'all doing? But also, what to me it says for all the Republicans, I'm thinking about all the Republicans I saw that rushed to say, I called the White House, I told them this wasn't okay, and then by the end of the evening, it became, I know the president, he's not racist. Okay, well, I will just say the president has been consistently telling us who he is, and so if we accept that this is who he is, then that also means the people that have propped him up, that have excused the racism, the white supremacy, the xenophobia, the sexism, because they liked his economic policy, right? That those people had to reckon with the decisions that they themselves made. So I think it's easier to try to make this a one-off situation as opposed to looking at it holistically for some folks.
I think this is, Miles, where, when we're talking about history revisionism, I think Donald Trump, when back in 2020, he called the 1619 Project ideological poison. And then, though, you even look at this weekend, Bad Bunny's performance, right? And the right is trying to make his performance an anti-patriotic halftime show. That is where I was interested to see how many Republicans were actually going to stand up and speak out against this depiction of the Obamas. And there was actually a longer list of Republicans than we're used to. Where does this go? And is this part of something that is bigger moving forward?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned 2020. I will never forget, in the lead up to the election in 2020, one of the really absurd things Donald Trump said. He said in October that he was the greatest president for blacks since Abraham Lincoln.
That's a quote.
Now, what I think people didn't realize is he was also going to take us back to the time of Abraham Lincoln. He's given a time machine to black Americans to experience what blacks could experience back then by using this type of rhetoric, by putting that timeline we see up there of Donald Trump. The only thing that's left out of that timeline is 20 times as many incidents that happened in private with the man. And I will confess to having gone into the first Trump administration thinking he probably isn't a bigot in his heart of hearts. That's probably just a mean criticism of the man. He's clearly an amoral person, but he can't be an actual bigot, right? Until meetings with him, when you would hear things like this and worse. I'll give you an example, and I'll give you the receipts. March 2019, I'm sitting in the Oval Office with the president. He's mocking people of color that come across the border alone with their children and saying, and he goes into an accent, oh, please help me, I need help. Then he says, at least if they showed up with a husband, I could put him in the fields to pick corn or something. Donald Trump, President of the United States. This is how the man in private views people of color, immigrants, people he doesn't want in this country. He mocks them and he derides them. So to your question, Vaughn, about what this means for Republicans, there's a quiet bigotry of passing the buck. That quiet bigotry is saying, well, he did it, but not me, or the staffer did it, not me, and dun, 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 it's over, I don't have to say anything. After yesterday, I now understand, for the first time, why you could be a young black American looking at politics and saying, wait a second, all the people who didn't say anything or pretended this was a one-day story, they're in on this. They're in on this, and clearly they're supporting this guy. Even if those folks console themselves by saying, well, I condemned him and we can move on. No. If you're someone who saw the president do this and you don't see the people in his own party vocally and consistently condemning it, you just assume they're on board with it. That's real bad for the fabric of our country. That's real bad for civic unity. And again, that's a time machine back to the 1860s.
Why do they always want black people to move on?
It is really easy when you are not the victim or the target of a certain type of ism, whether it's racism, sexism, like, it is easy to be like, well, we talked about it, now let's move on. Well, I live this every day. Simone lives this every single day. It is actually impossible for us to move on from these kind of tropes, right? Because we get the exact same thing in our inboxes and online when we're just doing our current jobs.
Yeah. You know what some of these white Republican staffers do understand? I had lunch with one this week, and they do understand that the politics of this is bad for them. This person had said to me, totally happy with Trump, except this racist SHIT is bad. These are people who supported us. We shouldn't be doing this. He also pointed actually to other agencies that have put out equally as horrific and disturbing things. People who hold the keys to the social media accounts who are sitting around and tweeting white nationalist images Sundays in America with depictions of just white people going to church. I mean, Miles, you at one point you knew the president. Do you personally believe he is racist, and have you seen him make racist comments firsthand?
Unequivocally, not just that episode in the Oval Office. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, the thing that hit me first in that administration, it's not like I was socially close with the man. I didn't need to be to know that he harbored these views. We would go sit in the Oval Office, and he would delineate the countries where he did not want to see any more people come into the United States. Countries like Somalia and Ethiopia and any country in Africa that didn't include white South Africaners, and say, okay, well, I guess he doesn't want people from those countries. But then the president would say, here are places where I want to turn on the spigots. I want people from Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden. I've traveled to the Nordic countries. I can tell you a little something about the Nordic countries and the prevailing race in the Nordic countries. A lot of white people, a lot of people with blonde hair. After you see that kind of side-by-side with the president making very clear to you, I need more white rich folks coming into this country. I need fewer black folks and people of color coming into this country. What other conclusion can you come to? In his heart of hearts, this is who he is. But you make a really good point, Jackie, that he is essentially cultivating a generation of young, creepy bigots. He is grooming young men in the Republican Party to be like he is, to be like Donald Trump and to harbor these views. He's permitting it. It's why we see it in GOP group chats. It's why we see this lexicon, this discourse that favors bigotry making its way back into the Republican Party for the first time in a significant way in a very long time.
Because at the end of the day, for people who are saying, oh, it's just a picture, it's just a video, at the heart of this, it is Donald Trump and Stephen Miller getting to decide and feeling they are the only ones who gets to decide who is an American.
Can I just say, that's the point. Because, frankly, I don't care if Donald Trump is personally racist. I care if the president of the United States is taking his racist views and imbuing it into policy within the federal government. I care if the deputy White House chief of staff, who, you know, has some white nationalist tendencies and seems to believe the white nationalist, white supremacist playbook, which is, I'm talking about Stephen Miller, if he is imbuing that into policy in the federal government. So that is the concern, I think, that people should have across the country about what this means for the policy. Whether he's personally racist or not, I feel like that's his business.
Well, Simone, I'm glad you said that, because what they've done since the first term is all those things he fantasized about. Let's shut off black and brown people coming into the country. Let's bring, you know, white rich people in from Europe. He didn't get to do in the first term. We rejected it. That was obviously immoral, unethical, maybe illegal. Now he is doing it. The most recent immigration policy from this administration turns off basically every country on the face of the globe except white people from South Africa. And people, by the way, there's a policy of this administration, if they speak out against European left-wing governments and they need a place to stay, well, we can bring in refugees from Europe who are attacked for criticizing the policies of their government.
This disgusting video posted by the so-called president was done intentionally. Donald Trump and his vile, racist, and malignant behavior. This guy is an unhinged bottom feeder. President Obama and Michelle Obama are brilliant, caring, and patriotic Americans. They represent the best of this country.
Joining us now is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Leader Jeffries, we appreciate you coming on, especially after we see what the president's done in this important conversation. People that know you, people like us who have reported on you, have met you before, see you as like a measured person, right? And so I think a lot of people may have been surprised by the video that you sent out, right? And surprised in that he got you all the way there, that at the end of the day, the president of the United States said all these things, and it is forcing kind of all of us to think about the ways in which we react to those things. What does it mean for the United States to have a president who not only posts racist things, whose policies have racist undertones, and who lies about it, and his team lies about it over and over again, even though we can see what they posted?
Well, his behavior is disgusting. and the response has been disgusting. And so, of course, everyday Americans, myself included, are disgusted by it all. And I felt compelled to communicate that in the most clear-throated way possible. Now, the president right now should own up to his mistake. He should apologize. And perhaps most importantly, he should pledge to do better. I mean, we should be bringing the country together. Instead, this guy continues to try to tear us apart. And there's no justification for it. And his behavior, of course, is unacceptable, it's unconscionable, and it's un-American.
You called it a mistake, leader, and I wonder if you do think it was a mistake, or do you think President Trump is a racist?
Well, I think, listen, from the standpoint of it being a mistake, it was a mistake as it relates to the notion that you would post something like this, a racist video targeting President Obama and Michelle Obama, both of whom are incredible, patriotic, compassionate Americans, as I've indicated, the best of what this country is all about. He continues to go after them and target them in ways that are unexplainable, other than the fact that he's just jealous and envious of their success, their eloquence, their brilliance, and their professionalism, the exact opposite of the manner in which he conducts himself.
But leader, do you believe that Donald Trump is a racist?
Well, what I've said about the president is, look, if the guy is not a racist, he's certainly doing the best job that he can trying to convince us otherwise as it relates to his behavior and the manner in which he's conducted himself repeatedly for decades.
Leader Jeffries, you are also in the midst of negotiations with regards to funding the Department of Homeland Security. It could lead to a partial government shutdown. You have 1 week left to figure that out. But it seems like any sort of deal is contingent on negotiations between you, Leader Schumer, and the president himself. I'm wondering personally what it is like for you to have to negotiate with someone who you might not say is racist explicitly, but espouses these kinds of racist views.
Well, listen, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've got to put the American people first. And what we have right now in front of us is a situation where ICE is clearly out of control and they need to be reined in. Taxpayer dollars, of course, should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not to brutalize and kill them, as we've seen in Minneapolis with the killings in cold blood of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Freddie. And so immigration enforcement in this country should be just, it should be fair, and it should be humane. That's not what's taking place right now on the streets of the United States of America. And so as a result, what we need to have happen is dramatic reform related to the Department of Homeland Security. And Leader Schumer and I, on behalf of House and Senate Democrats, we've laid out 10 points that need to be addressed, including mandatory body cameras, judicial warrant requirements, masks need to come down. We need accountability so that state and local elected officials are able to investigate and prosecute violations of the law by ICE agents and others acting in concert with them. And so I'm going to approach this discussion as it relates to, there's a clear set of demands. These changes need to be enacted. We're not going to accept a my way or the highway approach. The status quo is unacceptable, and we need bold, meaningful change.
Leader, could you lay out for the public what they should expect from this next week? Understanding that Leader Thune over on the Senate side said the Republican conference would not get behind these 10 demands. Number one, how many conversations have you had with President Trump here in the year of 2026 so far? And do you anticipate or desire to have any conversations directly with him over the next 5-6 days?
I have not had a single conversation with Donald Trump or anyone at a high level at the White House during 2026, which to me shows their lack of seriousness as it relates to this issue. It's clear to me that Donald Trump and the Republicans, they want to shut down FEMA. They want to shut down the Coast Guard. They want to shut down TSA and the other parts of DHS that serve the American people because they're uninterested in reining ICE in. They're uninterested in getting this agency, which is so clearly out of control, to conduct themselves like every other law enforcement agency in the country, as opposed to brutalizing the American people, which is what is horrifying everyday Americans. So as we move forward, we continue to maintain, we'll talk to anyone, anytime, any place, when it comes to solving problems, meeting the moment, and addressing the challenges of the American people. That would be the president, that would be the relevant cabinet officials, and of course that means my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But we're not going to accept any kind of my way or the highway approach. We need dramatic change at DHS, period, full stop.
Leader Jeffries, also this week, the Epstein files. It has continued to beleaguer this president. It's continued to be something that the American people want answers on. In Congress, there's some upcoming depositions on February 9th. Ghislaine Maxwell is going to testify February 26th. Hillary Clinton, February 27th. Bill Clinton. Richard Kahn is on March 11th. He's a co-executive of the Epstein estate. The other co-executive of the estate, Darren Endike, on March 19th. You are the leader. I assume you're talking to the folks that will be having these conversations with them. What are Democrats looking to gain in these conversations, both from the folks that are on the Epstein side, but also the, President Bill Clinton, who is in quite a few photos with Epstein?
Well, the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, and the Oversight Committee Dems will continue to take the lead on this issue. But collectively, what we're trying to achieve is transparency and accountability. Those are the demands that have so courageously been made by the Epstein survivors, and those are the demands that we are trying to bring to life, because that's the American way. And the question for the administration will continue to be, what are you hiding from the American people, and who are you protecting? This was a horrible situation that should never be allowed to happen again. And one of the ways to make sure that that happens, that occurs, that we don't see this ever happen again in the United States of America, is for there to be transparency and accountability. That also means releasing the other 3 million documents that the Department of Justice continue to hide from the American people.
Leader, as you're well aware, calling in former President Bill Clinton is setting a pretty remarkable precedent. Do you think that your cohorts who are leading the House Oversight Committee and the House Judiciary Committee should move to call in President Trump to testify? After all, he is mentioned thousands of times throughout the Epstein files.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we can't take seriously what James Comer and the Republicans on the other side of the aisle are doing as it relates to trying to get to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which has been the objective of Democrats and a handful of Republicans every step of the way. We should hear from President Trump about what he knows. If they're demanding that Bill Clinton come in, if they're demanding that Secretary Hillary Clinton come in, and they have no connection that they can point to related to why she should be brought into Congress, and now these people are actually refusing to have that testimony be public, which the Clintons are saying they prefer, which again exposes the fact that our Republicans are just trying to distract the American people as it relates to what may be in those files, and the culpability and connection and accountability to rich and powerful people, including, but certainly not limited to, the President of the United States.